We are emotional because that's how it has been passed down to us. From everything, the climate, history, economy, and most importantly, culture, because culture is a mirror of what's happening inside you. But for them, everything happened very slowly, while for us, I don't like our pace either. What I dislike even more is the attitude from above. And it turns out that's passive aggression, a period at the end of the sentence. Okay, I'm just too old. Burnout is actually impossible if you don't burn at all. And we do burn.
Now you're always on your phones, but once we were deeply in songs.
That's why it's useful to go to a psychologist. Going to a psychologist is like looking in a mirror with good lighting. You can see the pimple, but your mom says you're beautiful. We need to remain Ukrainians, and then we'll succeed.
Welcome. I'm Nick Lisiski, and this is The Nation's Archetype, a cultural project that deeply explores the very foundations of Ukrainian national identity, who we were, who we've truly become, and who we should and indeed can be. We diligently look for answers in our rich folklore, as well as in meaningful conversations with outstanding representatives of our great nation. Today, our guest is military psychologist, officer of the 67th Brigade, Andrii Kozinchuk. Good afternoon, Andrii. Each episode of our project is dedicated to one of the values characteristic of the Ukrainian people. And today we'd like to talk with you about such a value as emotionality.
A wonderful value.
While studying Ukrainian folklore, we came to the conclusion that emotionality is one of the defining characteristics of Ukrainian identity. It is manifested in sincerity of feelings, a tendency for deep experiences, receptiveness to beauty, kindness, and suffering. This idea of the superiority of spiritual and emotional knowledge, that is, knowledge of the heart, over purely rational knowledge, has become a fundamental worldview paradigm for Ukrainians, expressing their way of thinking, feeling, and acting. In your opinion, what is emotionality? How do you personally understand this concept?
Emotionality here is not initially about being Ukrainian. It's about human, actually not even just human, but animal feelings that help us simply survive and then go on to live. And they are inherent to everyone. Well, there is no such thing as an emotionless nation. There are just less emotional and more emotional ones. For some reason, it's quite commonly believed that Finns or Germans are generally less emotional, while Italians and Spaniards are often perceived as being more emotional indeed. But in reality, all emotions are inherent to humans. And if, for example, you consider anger, it's a powerful emotion, and it truly helps you to survive or to drive out some persistent thief or a dangerous villain. Just like animals, joy is also a profound and powerful emotion. You simply cannot hide it anywhere, and very often throughout history, it was expressed quite precisely in various forms of art, in fierce armed revolutions, and in significant liberation struggles. And all of this also came from there, from emotionality. Emotionality very often prevails over rationality, in good ways and bad ways. In psychology, there is no plus or minus, but it often prevails, because no matter how rational you are, emotionality is older than that. From the perspective of neurobiology, the limbic brain, which is primarily responsible for these emotional responses, is situated a bit deeper than our more rational cognitive part.
That is, the roots of our emotionality lie in our history.
Of course, in our history they are so very deep that it's not just something historians describe, but it's actually better described by neurobiologists, biologists, and researchers in this field. Why does it truly exist in humans, and specifically, why does it indeed exist in Ukrainians?
On the topic of emotionality itself. Back then, it was probably called by other names, and there was such a concept that appeared, the philosophy of the heart. You've probably heard of it, right? It actually originates from Grigory Savich Skovoroda, and simply put, it's the idea that feelings dominate over logical reasoning, and that this is characteristic of Ukrainians.
Yes, right.
Why do you really think that is?
Actually, if we look purely and solely at the fundamental psychology of human emotions, they really and truly You can't truly hide them. You can suppress them, but you absolutely cannot conceal them. For example, imagine you go to work and let's say something genuinely good happens to you. You're feeling quite happy, but then everyone else at work will undoubtedly hate you for it. You know, you come to some typical office job or even to the modern military nowadays. You walk around all like, hooray! But everyone else is supposed to be in a work mode, you know, and you suppress it, you kind of hold it back, but your eyes are still smiling. You feel happy on the inside. And it's the same with sadness, for example. Like you come in, something's happened, and you have that kind of Ukrainian melancholy, and you might smile insincerely. And yet, Ukrainians have this remarkable thing that even so, we still truly love to have fun, to relax and unwind. We're a very communicative nation. And it showed in this as well. And no matter what actions you undertake, your true inner emotions will always be visible. Even Sigmund Freud, when he carefully studied all of this, stated that it is truly impossible to completely hide emotions. And we also express them in some way. And it's immediately obvious if you're just walking around all gloomy, a total bore. People tell you jokes, try to entertain you, but nothing helps. And on the contrary, when you're just cheerful for no reason, like you're doing something and humming to yourself under your breath, you're singing inside, there's a whole symphony or orchestra going on, or on the contrary, there's a deep sadness or sorrow, and it will still show on you. Ukrainians show this very strongly. I don't know, no matter how official the video is, whether it's from parliament, from government, or whatever the source may be, and everyone is just sitting there. You truly don't need to be a psychologist to look at those particular faces and clearly discern what they're thinking. I personally cannot read minds, of course. But you can tell what a person is feeling, disgust, or some kind of fear, or some kind of joy. Or you can see that the person isn't really there at all. They're just sitting there, but their mind is somewhere else. Teachers probably explain this really well in teenage classes. Like they're supposedly reading some very important algebra, and outside it's May, the sun is shining, and you can see the emotions right on people's faces. That's why you can tell that emotions are just bursting out.
Ukrainians are generally more emotional than many Nordic peoples, but certainly less emotional than, say, the passionate Italians or the expressive Spaniards. So is this particular Ukrainian emotionality of ours a fundamental weakness, or is it truly an integral part of our national strength?
It's hard for me to say whether it's a plus or a minus. What I can say for sure is that it's a trait of ours that's been passed down through generations because, for example, among Nordic peoples, it's just cold there. Hey, the warmer it is for you and the more you can express yourself, the better it gets. We have a generally moderate climate and our history is such that, I don't know, perhaps you could accurately call us moderately emotional. We are indeed emotional, but certainly not excessively so. At the very same time, well, again, if you carefully look at, and I apologize for this rather unpleasant example, like funerals, for instance, women, especially grandmothers, are all weeping there. Men grieve in silence. And actually, psychologists and psychoanalysts who study the human mind, God, those who study these psychodiagnosticians, they say that in fact, also because of their emotionality, our women live longer and men less so, even though men are less emotional. It's neither good nor bad. Here you go, that's the kind of effectiveness we have. It's bad that men die earlier, but it's good that women live longer. How to reconcile that? It's unclear. And because of these very historical milestones that have been passed down to us, we are changing. By the way, we are learning a bit more to express emotions. But again, our genes, all of that adds up. So to say that we actually walk down the street laughing and crying, no, absolutely not. But there's no longer that harsh wondering when someone truly expresses themselves. Now, in Ukraine, people whisper about it much less these days, like, aren't you really ashamed of yourself to laugh at all? But more often, this happens on social networks. There, people might still say, "Aren't you ashamed to post a photo of yourself at the lake having a barbecue when there's a war going on?" But it could turn out that the person in the photo is a serviceman on leave who gets to see his wife just once a year. So there are still these hunters after emotions, emotion hunters. That's great. We should patent that. We are emotional because that's how it was passed down to us from everything: the climate, history, economy, and most importantly, culture. Because culture is a mirror, it reflects what's happening inside you. You could say that, unfortunately, we have this situation like the worse things were in Ukraine, the more vibrant our culture became. So does that mean if our culture is suppressed, everything will be perfect for us? Well, no. Roughly speaking, in the 90s, when we were going through truly terrible economic upheavals, taking an essential exam for our very existence, that's precisely when culture was truly present and deeply felt. There was Ukrainian theater and, excuse me for saying it on your program, show business, but people still sang, the Ukrainian language was spoken, and everything else continued. Of course, there was also external cultural aggression, insisting that everyone should sing in Russian to broaden our audience. But still, it was... Now, when I sometimes rewatch singers from the 90s, and I was just a young kid back then, listen, it still sounds incredibly cool. Even now, honestly, it's truly great. And that's part of the culture, it's part of the emotions that pour out. And no matter what the trends are now, if you do it insincerely, you'll never make it. And on the contrary, for example, if you take such a tiny aspect, if some showbiz star writes a song just to follow a trend, they might put it out right away, and just as quickly, it flops. But if a person writes, sings, dances, or plays with real sincerity, it lasts forever. That's classic.
You mentioned the funeral rite and our emotionality regarding it. I recently saw a video by a British woman who lives in Ukraine, and she actually compares our culture to her own, and she said that for her the Ukrainian funeral rite and our traditions related to funerals and death made a very strong impression on her, because in Britain it's generally not customary to react emotionally to death. But here, on the contrary, the entire tradition is built around this very concept. And if we talk about folklore, about our deeply held beliefs, there is a very strong... The ancient cult of ancestors, actually, which is truly prehistoric, has remarkably survived in our beliefs right up to this present day. And in fact, everything related to the funeral rite is an echo of this cult. And if we talk about emotions, it turns out that this also comes from ancient times. It has been preserved in us.
That's a truly interesting fact. I've had quite a few significant requests, like when someone unfortunately dies. For example, my own father. For instance, he was diagnosed with cancer. I know for sure that he will die. I might not be able to handle it, help me, support me, and that's what we work on. But there have been a few requests like, I'm scared because I didn't cry much at the funeral. I didn't grieve enough. What will people say? The person isn't happy, they're very sad, but the tears just won't come. You see, it's so ingrained in us that you absolutely have. To break down there, all the graves have to be soaked with tears. You have to be revived. It's not enough. I suffered. Do something to me. Maybe I'm a sociopath and people are already talking. I say, listen, let's not put labels on things before we've even seen a psychiatrist. But that's how it is. In Ukraine, everything at a funeral has to be just like that. I'm not saying there should be gypsies, bears, and 2 accordions. No. But really, you know, there's still this thing that everything has to be just right here. And again, I haven't personally studied this. I'm certainly not a cultural expert, and I haven't thoroughly researched exactly how many, if you can even truly call them that, specific funeral songs we currently have. I mean, those kinds of funeral songs. There are marches, no question, but there are also some that are really... My first marching song was at the Kiev Military Lyceum, a marching song, and it was a funeral one. 2 Cossacks died, one rich, the other poor, and we sang about it. A Ukrainian folk song, of course. So we have it like, listen, we don't have a holiday of death like they do in Mexico, for example. But our attitude toward death is very clear for one simple reason. Throughout the entire history of Ukrainians, the deaths of our people have often been sudden, like, completely unexpected. Sometimes it's war. Sometimes it's an invasion, sometimes something else. So, it's not like when someone is old and passes away, which is sad but logical. But there were so many of these situations that we experienced them in a very philosophical, very Ukrainian way. And we talked about it, we shared about it, like someone died, how terrible that is. And of course, all of this is also connected with religion, with religious beliefs that were passed down as traditions or archetypes of attitudes toward death. And if there is an attitude toward death, then it's only logical that there should be an attitude toward life as well. I would like to see more of that, because right now, if we talk about emotions, a lot of people, at least those who reach out to me, though this isn't a study, it's subjective, talk about the fear of death, which is also logical. It's normal to be afraid of death. And we very often, we redirect them to the fear of living a bad life because they're so afraid of dying that they stop living at all. For example, if we look at the beginning of the full-scale invasion, a lot of people were afraid to feel joy, to turn on, to listen to any kind of music. You could say that the track of a Ukrainian is the only song, Plyne Kacha, that's it, maybe the anthem of Ukraine as well. But anything else, God forbid, like, say, listening to rap music, or perhaps watching some stand-up comedy, a comedy film, having something like that, there's a fear that I'm distancing myself from certain social trends, that I have to be like everyone else. It's a fear of these kinds of emotions. And when I talked about this, I wrote about it on some social network, that it's normal to feel joy, to experience things, to be afraid, and most importantly, to have some happiness, at least today, during the day, to do something good for yourself. No, have a chocolate bar, go ahead and indulge in this, but do it in moderation. It seemed really quite obvious to me, and there was a great deal of feedback. Thank you for allowing me to do this. I wasn't forbidding it, it's not like someone else was, but everyone was waiting for some kind of permission. And this, in the end, is also about emotions. Some emotions are forbidden. Some emotions, for some reason. Well, for example, when I work with various government agencies, such as the Judicial Service and also the Armed Forces of Ukraine, God bless them, it's just not typical there. You really don't want to come to get your passport, to obtain some very basic passport, maybe some official certificate, and there's this incredibly cheerful guy sitting right there, enthusiastically telling you jokes. Or conversely, an old lady sits there handing you a certificate and cries. She cries because there's a war, you want something standard, unemotional, and it's difficult for them. Because, first of all, they can't just let these emotions out. Mostly, they suppress their anger. For example, some inexperienced person comes in and demands something that's not possible, like asking for a land certificate at the passport office, for instance. And when they try to explain, the person gets angry. There's an angry reaction, and they suppress it. But later, when they've learned to do this, they then encounter situations in everyday life where they can't let it out. They can't squeeze out this emotion. They suffer because of it, because this anger which has built up in you over the day, it's not necessarily about work. Someone cut you off, you read some nonsense online, or your child told you they got another bad grade, and you bottle it all up, and then you take it somewhere else and uncontrollably unleash this intense emotion on your unsuspecting family, just because a simple cup wasn't properly washed and is still sitting there in the sink, or some poor innocent conductor suffers, the one who simply asked you for a ticket and then it all just comes out. And a lot of these emotions are actually recommended to be channeled into creativity, sports, self-development, things like that.
So when working with people, you usually teach them not to suppress their emotions, but to experience them.
That's the foundation. That's the foundation. But again, let's not go to extremes here. Like, if you don't like your boss, you just went and gave him a beating. That's not okay. It's more about not just learning to hold back, but teaching them to manage their emotions. When you've built up a lot of anger throughout the day, when you've just had the absolute worst day ever, like you woke up in the morning, stepped on the cat's tail, and things like that kept happening to you all the way until the end of your workday. You shouldn't go home and take it all out on your family. That is, everyone should have their own way. And there isn't just one solution for everyone. Go do yoga or pray or run a marathon before work, knock out 42 kilometers, and that's it. For everyone, it's something individual. But the science of common sense says this: nothing comes from nowhere and nothing disappears into nowhere. If you have a lot of emotions inside, you need to release them in a controlled way, so that they can do their job. Well, now here's a bit of boring theory, but just a little. Why do we say that emotions can't be suppressed? Every basic emotion, joy, sadness, anger, fear, disgust, when they arise, certain substances our glands secrete some substances that flow through us, and they make our bodies react differently. Fear, for example, is adrenaline, a hormone. Anger is noradrenaline. There are a bunch of hormones, what we call happiness hormones, but they're not exactly about happiness. Dopamines, all sorts of oxytocins. And when you don't express your emotions, they're still inside you. They mix together, and this affects your metabolism. You might lose or gain weight, develop all sorts of psychosomatic issues, or get redness on your skin. And inside, you just don't feel okay. If all these hormones really get mixed up, you can actually develop anxiety, and an anxiety disorder, well, that's really not good at all. That's why it's important for us to be aware that we have some emotion. Even if you can't express joy, that's not okay either. You need to learn how to feel joy in little things like, I don't know, in the sunshine outside or in a really cool t-shirt. Like when you take a shower, and not just shower, but put on clean underwear. You can allow yourself that, right? It's not something impossible, is it? Like fresh sheets, being clean, just smell yourself, all of it, enjoy it, say to yourself, maybe even out loud, that it feels good. Well, Ukrainians appreciate this now because many have already spent nights in sleeping bags, in the subway, in ditches, wherever, in dugouts and so on. And all these things, when you actually express them, it means it worked. Because when there's too much, you come in angry, ready to destroy or kill someone. That's how we used to do it. A saber-toothed tiger attacks, you get really angry, and you'd somehow fought that cat. And we're still the same. We're all those hunters. So potentially all of us are either out to destroy or to run away out of fear. And now we need to do all this little by little. But nowadays, we don't kill saber-toothed tigers. The Red Book says they don't exist at all, just like Zhytomyr. Well, anyway, but we still destroy things, like we can break a stick, tear up some paper, or just go somewhere out of sight to shout. Very intensely, just to let it all out. And it's great if you can do something useful with it, like get into sports, channel it into fear, into meditation, and all of this is very closely connected to creativity.
Yes, actually, we will certainly get to the topic of creativity a little bit later on today. Processing and managing emotions, meaning you need to work with your emotions so you don't end up regretting it later.
Another thing that's really helpful, for example, for emotions to be released, a lot of things need to happen. Take fear, for instance. The brain has to actually feel fear. That could come from anxiety, a sound, an explosion, something like that. So it could be something real or something in your head that triggers it. The brain sends a signal to your adrenal glands to release adrenaline. Adrenaline spreads, your blood vessels dilate, blood rushes into your muscles, so you can run or do something. So it's a truly huge and complex process, biological, psychological, the whole entire thing. And then some very wise person tells you never, ever be afraid of anything at all. And that's when I start to get angry because, come on, brain, don't recognize fear, adrenal glands, don't release, well, adrenaline. It's just impossible. We all have this inside us. Some people have it more, well, I don't know. Imagine a 15-year-old teenager who grew up in a big city, spent his whole life there. He really knows very well all about different trends and brands. And for the first time in his life, at 15, he's taken to a village. A typical one where the asphalt isn't exactly level, where there are lots of cows and goats. He saw a Muscovy duck for the first time. So that can also be a kind of fear. And the child might approach, but this fear is something you can work with. How? When we find out what it is, that a Muscovy duck is actually a pretty useful animal, unlike some Russians. So you can deal with all of this. The main thing is not to keep it bottled up inside. And it would be really great if we started working on this from childhood, so to speak, because some things, like expressing all our emotions, were forbidden to us, since overly emotional people can be scary. But for me, it's actually the opposite that scares me. Emotionless people, that's really, wow, that's where an explosion could happen. That's precisely why all these emotional people tend to live a bit longer. And you truly know more what to genuinely expect from them than from someone who's super calm and perhaps a little unpredictable.
But speaking of truly showing these emotions, if we talk about you personally, have you ever genuinely regretted showing your feelings? And did something happen to you afterwards?
Yes, usually I just blurt something out. I blurt it out where, well, it's always about whether those emotions are appropriate or not, you know. Laughing out loud or perhaps telling some dirty joke at a funeral is probably not a very good idea. Crying at someone's party because life is so incredibly sad, and in general, and you are fat, well, that's just absolutely awful. Usually it's in certain social circles where you're among your very own. There are their own rules of behavior, and that's where I could blurt something out because I was really scared to get into that circle. How would they judge me? So I would say something just to show I wasn't scared, and then it turned into a kind of micro-canceling. It's like coming to the military, some volunteer shows up and starts saying, you know, we really need to be more humane, we truly need to love our fellow neighbor and show compassion. Because love will save the world, for example. You can say a lot of things to a soldier, but basically it means you all are just doing some nonsense here, and that's it. It's like telling miners, you know, coal isn't profitable at all. From an economic standpoint, there's solar energy, and from the point of ecology, in fact, that's how it really is. But telling this person who, well, that's life. There's the mine, the coal face, and it was precisely this kind of work that was valued. It's a bit easier to say that you have new opportunities to use energy in this direction, let's give it a try, rather than telling someone that their whole life was for nothing. Yes, that's true, and here it's important when we work with emotions to explain that stress management is much more important than just, you know, never holding yourself back and always expressing everything. In fact, you need to restrain yourself in a controlled way and open up when you can actually do it. And your task is to learn to identify this. Because someone at a meeting might just start cursing out a boss. And everyone will say, oh, wow, how sincere he is. But the boss will often close himself off emotionally, and his immediate reaction will be to figure out precisely how to get rid of that particular person. There was a very specific case just like this. A truly excellent managerial commander got promoted and subsequently became a high-ranking, influential leader. And he quickly realized that there was some truly major corruption going on within the organization. And he spoke about it very openly and quite sincerely to an even higher up, a senior official, who then promptly went and fired him. This was most likely, obviously, because he was a significant part of that very corruption scheme. And this particular head of the department, who effectively uncovered it all, he did exactly the right, cool, and necessary things that truly needed to be done there. And when I went to support him because he was just fired, thank goodness, not imprisoned. And we came to the conclusion that everything was done correctly. With one small adjustment, it was just ineffective. He didn't stop anything, didn't do anything. And that's why with emotions it is exactly the same, that you can express them there in some way, but it just won't be. That's why it's important to note for yourself which circles, atmospheres, people, and social groups correspond to the same emotions, where you can express yourself, where you can't, where you can joke, and where that's strictly forbidden because it's unprofessional, for example. And if you worked your whole life with one category of people, you need to prepare yourself to work with a different category of people. Why can't I reach that level? Why is it so hard for me to consult or give lectures to some top executives? For me, the middle tier is exactly my tier because I am part of the middle tier. And it's not some kind of devaluation. It's about those people who are involved. They're the middle layers. And I insist, when I call them the middle tier, I say, you have something that the top doesn't have. You can be happy. Just from something simple, I don't know, buy yourself some fancy underwear or whatever and be happy. Those guys, though, they can't. It's hard for them. That's why, yes, I had a lot of my own emotions about it. I don't personally have such ban, but I do strongly recommend not communicating with the inspection authorities because, you see, I simply can't keep my emotions in check. And even when I somehow managed to keep my emotions in check for once, I truly thought I was being super constructive, but it all ended very badly because the people who came to inspect us, they started thinking about the importance of their, not their existence, but the importance of their role here. In other words, the purpose of an inspection is actually to help, not to make these people feel guilty. But there are actually very few such supervisory bodies. By the way, as cliché as it may sound, I actually saw this in America. When someone is struggling and an inspection comes, the inspection is there to understand how to help the person, not to put them down. There's also such thing when we indeed can hold back our emotions. And now I'm already a bit okay, I'm a very emotional person. And literally just 5 or 6 years ago, I have learned how to manage it at least a little bit. Roughly speaking, I'm like singing in the shower. Sorry for such an example, but it's just to express myself. And it's a good thing when we express ourselves in a safe environment. This, yes, is a very important thing. When you feel safe, you can express all of this. When you don't feel safe, it's much more difficult. And the crucial question for many Ukrainians now is this: exactly how safe do you truly feel? If it's something very bad, you really need to figure out precisely what actions you can take for yourself to feel much safer and more secure. And right away there will be skeptics who will say, so should everyone go abroad? And I'll say, what if you did actually go abroad? How truly safe would you feel then? I know a great many people who went abroad not because it was wow, absolutely amazing, but primarily because they had more viable options to leave. How genuinely good do you really feel there? And here it's all about the nuances, just emotions.
There were different levels of emotional danger back then. Exactly.
Exactly.
We have previously mentioned saber-toothed tigers and the act of expressing emotions on a purely physical level. Modern people now have significantly more opportunities to communicate and openly discuss their various emotions. But how exactly do you truly learn to effectively talk about your own emotions?
Are there recommendations? By the way, in communication as well, have you noticed that nowadays many people have switched to verbal communication? Before, when we interacted, it was all about facial expressions, emotions. You can talk, but your nonverbal communication is terrible. For example, I truly love you very much. I said something about love, but it honestly feels like I just said it to simply get it over with. So how do you actually truly do it? And now, in written text, there are tons of smileys and emojis. Some people have told me, are you mad at me or something? Why did you put a period at the end of the sentence? My Ukrainian language teacher, that's how she taught me. She would have scolded me if I hadn't put a period. But it turns out, a simple period at the very end of a sentence is actually considered a clear sign of passive aggression. Okay, I am definitely too old for this. But regarding our emotions and in how we truly express them, now we have truly moved into a completely different and distinct sphere of human communication. And for some reason, all emotions now are being completely hidden. Well, not all of them, of course. Some emotions might indeed shift to this, but passive aggression is when you deliberately leave things unsaid. That's already a very subtle kind of psychological abuse, like when it's guess exactly why I'm not talking to you. And to truly learn how to effectively express our emotions, we at the very least need to clearly identify what specific emotion we're feeling at any given moment. Let's start with that. I am truly, genuinely happy. And what exactly precisely is our fundamental problem? For some particular reason, among many Ukrainians, well, I really truly shouldn't generalize, but for some specific Ukrainians, there's this pervasive, deeply ingrained mindset that I absolutely, unequivocally have to earn my own happiness. It started from things like if I wanted new sneakers, I had to finish the school term with good grades. Or if I wanted to go to camp, I had to behave myself and help my grandma in the garden. I guess that's where it comes from. Well, it all started in childhood. And then as an adult, you feel like you have to earn things. Like I earned the right to go to a restaurant. Dude, it's just a restaurant. If people eat there, it's not some big deal. Or like, I have earned myself the right to buy new jeans. Dude, if your crotch is worn out, then yeah, you really have two options. To the tailor or to the store? Well, for new pants. In other words, you don't have to earn this kind of joy. If you have, this is called Cinderella upbringing, when in order to go to a disco, you have to plant 40 rose bushes or sort through grains first. There are things that are worth earning. So this joy, that's exactly it. Because sometimes it's just about being happy. That's normal. But these hormones that are released, since they're not dopamine, they also participate in metabolism. So I see it as a need. Does a mobile phone deserve to be charged or not? Well, how can I put it? If you don't charge it, it won't work. And it's the same with us. To realize like, aha, I'm happy, I'm really happy. I went and bought a shawarma, and I didn't just eat it thinking, oh God, I'm already fat, and why am I doing this? But I ate it and just enjoyed it. To learn to realize that I'm sad. Just sad, that's all. Why? Well, because something happened. To say I'm scared, I'm afraid. Or I'm angry at you. Not that you're a jerk. That's already about him or her. But I'm angry at you. I have, some problems. And I'm just angry. And of course, disgust. I feel truly hurt there because this person did everything, or perhaps didn't do something at all. I feel deeply hurt that my own father didn't protect me when someone was scolding me. So, before expressing these powerful emotions, it's really important for us to sit with them for a little while. Like I know that this is precisely the state I'm in right now. Accept all of this, that I have these feelings, and that's it. It's more about biology. You can't say like when you're not afraid, when you know this situation very well. I've been in the military for a very long time. I was at war from 2014 to 2016, and now again from 2022 until now. But I haven't seen people who are like, oh, a combat mission. Wonderful. There are those individuals who try to get involved in the preparation. They carefully check their equipment and then pack their backpacks. They clean and oil their weapons. But people who are just like, because that's normal. And you say, yes, I'm afraid, but we're aiming for functional fear. So that if I'm afraid, I'll do it this way. Identify it, and then by saying it out loud, when you say, I'm afraid, I feel joy, I feel fear. Your whole system, your human system, it becomes easier for you to cope with it. There are emotions you can't handle. For example, if it's not fear, but terror, that's something very uncontrollable. And you can't even ask for help because you're not in control right now. You need time for all those hormones to settle before you can actually do anything. But this usually happens when it's not just stress, but distress. That is, something extremely frightening. So, can you handle yourself when you find out that your father has a very serious diagnosis? Obviously not. And then, when you can truly pull yourself together, that's when it's time to ask for help. Including not just for your father, but for yourself as well. And these emotions, how do you learn to deal with them? You need to process them first. You really have to learn how to do this. It's not something that you know from your childhood. Because, I've seen it when a child, say a boy, is walking, he's 5 years old, for example, and he falls off a scooter, then scrapes his knee. He sits there on the asphalt and cries. And his mother comes over and starts scolding him for not watching where he was going, saying he was clumsy or that he was glued to his phone. At 5 years old, that's not okay either. But still. And on top of the physical pain, the boy also feels emotional pain. There's fear and then guilt from his mother because he's not tough enough. And for us, what's important is not just the first thing. It's learning to identify our emotions. And secondly, we live among other people. As a rule, with people who love you. If you live with people who don't love you, I have a question for you. Well, why? So you live with these people who love you. They truly do not know what your specific need is when you experience a particular emotion or feeling. Because, for example, you're happy, you're just in a good mood, and then someone close says, you're happy, but your pants are torn. Just like that, she kills the moment. Or, for example, a young girl is feeling quite down. Perhaps someone from work has called her and told her she did a really bad job. She just truly wants to be held. But the boy who lives with her, when he feels bad, he wants to be alone. He wants to be alone. And she knows that when he feels bad, she wants to be held, so she hugs him, strokes him, and that annoys him. Two identical emotions in two different people, but the needs are different. And you need to teach your person, the one who loves you, to clarify your own needs. For example, if you're feeling bad, perhaps you need someone to make you some warm tea and then leave you alone. Or from a safe distance, just throw a chocolate bar at me and run away like, and take off. How do you find this out? Because we all have very different experiences in life. Let's share them with each other. Look, when I'm feeling quite down, please do this one thing. It will make me feel truly great. The moment that connection clicks, it'll really help, since we reflect each other's emotions. We can actually feel these emotions, and then we feel our own helplessness, that there's nothing we can do about it. But we can. We just don't know how. And the easiest way is just to talk about it, to say it out loud. Don't expect him to guess, because he can't. He bought a flower, for example. He added mayonnaise to the Olivier salad, but it's still not right. Turns out what was needed was a hug. Well, I don't know. There just wasn't this kind of teaching that you need to learn to do this. And two distinctly different people inherently mean two entirely different experiences. And if you have already thoughtfully learned to accurately identify your very own experiences and emotions, then please teach the people you currently live with precisely what they should effectively do. This is just an amazing kind of support. By the way, situations can be different. One day you might want one thing, and the next day, something else. It's hard to explain anything when you're emotional. And there's this phrase, when you have to explain, you don't have to anymore. You always need to explain. Always. Write it down, send it. Just don't hint. Say it directly, do everything, and preferably before it happens, because it definitely will happen.
The archetype of the nation is created with the support of the Ukrainian Cultural Foundation and is available in various formats. So, choose the one you like, listen, watch, read our episodes, and also share your thoughts in the comments, because in this project every opinion matters. And of course, subscribe to our channels and pages so you don't miss anything interesting. All the links are in the description for this episode. In one of your insightful interviews, you explicitly stated that human emotions are often felt most intensely and profoundly during times of war. And you are, in fact, a military psychologist. People come to you with their emotions. What kind of emotions do people come to you with?
Often it's like you're just sitting in headquarters while it's hell out there at the front and you're just lounging around here. Oh, sure, you're emotional. So obviously now's the perfect time to be rational. Why is that? The thing is, as I already mentioned, the brain has a rational part and an emotional part, but there's also a part called the reptilian brain, as MacLean, a neurobiologist, called it back in 1955 in the last century. These are the most basic emotions, the most elementary ones. And there they all exist in extremes. Not just joy, but bliss. Not just fear, but terror. Not just anger, but rage. Pure and intense. It's not just for nothing. It's because you need to survive. These emotions come out when you're in an unusual situation, so you react in an unusual way, and it's really intense. These intense emotions are often not typical for everyone, especially when you're in that extreme heightened state. For example, as we've recently seen, there have been many funerals lately, which is partly due to our cultural traditions. At the funeral, a grieving mother deeply mourns her beloved son who has tragically died. If a mother is burying her son, it obviously means he was young, even if he was 45. That means the mother is already at least 65 or older, so young by the standards of death. And she doesn't cry, she grieves. You absolutely cannot tell this person, calm down, don't cry, everything will be fine. No, it won't be fine, he's gone. And it needs to come out. Our task as psychologists and as a society is to make sure that during these emotions, this person doesn't harm themselves or others. Exactly in that order. Because the greatest risk is that this person might harm themselves. For example, an angry warrior, and he's angry because of injustice, lack of information, people have died, so he goes and starts pounding on a wall with his fists. The wall could be a storage wall, some kind of military wall, and you could hurt your knuckles, even break your hand. It's important to put a pillow between the wall and your fist, and go ahead, hit it, don't hold back, you can even scream while doing it. When someone yells at me, thank God you're yelling at me. At least you're not yelling at your wife or your girlfriend or, God forbid, a child. I'm fine, I'll go later, take a breath, do something else. So, the task here is precisely to accompany these emotions, but under no circumstances to stop them. Don't get mad. Why are you really laughing like a horse? This is exactly the moment when you need to be serious right now. And indeed, the experiences are more intense during war, not only during war. A person who has gone through psychotraumatic events, it's a boring term, but it's a kind of shock that will have consequences. These could be veterans, internally displaced persons, people who have suffered some kind of loss, not their own, for example, the loss of loved ones. They may be experiencing exactly these emotions. And you can't understand this emotion. You can only ensure their safety and offer support. If someone is crying, under no circumstances tell them not to cry. Just offer them a glass of water. Stay close by, but don't rush in with hugs unless the person asks for it. If you really want to, you can ask, I really want to hug you. Is that okay with you? And they might say yes, or just ignore it. And you need to respect that, not push with, come on, come on. I know, hugs can heal. That's true, but only if both sides want it. So with these emotions, yes, in war, this isn't something I came up with. Smarter people have said it. But war is such chaos, immense chaos. And whoever, out of the two sides, manages to have more order in that chaos will actually win. And here, emotions, they always contradict rationality. Yeah, like let's go, the four of us, and liberate this village from the occupiers. Sure, great idea. So they go. And what happens? 4 are killed, or they get captured. That's just not rational. And it's very important, especially for management, command, or the administrative side, that they can maintain their composure. For example, if something really ticks off the brigade commander, right away some kind of unreasonable order comes down. That's never ever okay. And here, that's something I also truly work on, to make sure commanders always keep a perfectly clear head. And that's really truly hard when you have lost, say, 35 people just yesterday. But you still have to think clearly. Yes, you have to. Why do commanders become a bit cynical? It's not because they're just like that, but because they need to stay rational. And for that, you need a lot of knowledge, a lot of support, and emotional management. Why do they shout, really? Because they can't hold it in. They can't restrain themselves inside. That's why our boys with mustaches and uniform are such gruff basses, because that's just how it is. And I would really like to see, purely out of curiosity, the negative emotions, how the Supreme Commander-in-Chief, the Commander-in-Chief, and so on handle them. And they absolutely, unequivocally must have it. Thank God we truly don't see it in public, because then we would inevitably see that this esteemed leader, well, this prominent official, is just a mere person. Because clearly what we need are flawless superheroes, brilliant, fearless, and perfect in every way. Yes, people. And to learn to express your emotions, to manage them, to get some benefit from them. After all, there are no negative emotions. That's what psychology teaches. Negative emotions don't exist. That is, even if you're angry, it's not for nothing. This should definitely work, and it should be to our significant benefit. And this is truly important. We can simply suppress them. Especially the Ukrainians, they can effectively suppress them. And then it's connected to rest. Ukrainians don't really rest. They go wild when they finally get a break. No time, you really need to work more. Just go, 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 and then you completely burn out. And what do you typically do on weekends? I usually catch up on much-needed sleep. Because you have sinned before that. Or perhaps you were watching a captivating series, or even texting, feeling quite sad, which is truly the favorite thing to do. And then you just completely exhaust yourself and you sleep to recover, instead of doing it gradually. And you wouldn't allow yourself to go to a coffee shop or something like that. And then you finally made it to some party or a wedding. And you took part in all the contests there, and then you feel embarrassed when you see yourself on YouTube. But learning to do this in portions gradually is important. This is our task currently right now.
This letting go, it's quite possibly and very probably connected to emotional burnout, which we all seem to experience quite frequently these days. So, what exactly do we do about our emotional burnout then in this situation?
Oh, the burnout.
You even have a course about this.
Yes, I have a comprehensive course. We diligently worked on it for a very long time, primarily because we observed that many people experiencing burnout, which is important to note, is not a medical condition, nor is it an actual illness, and it initially appeared most prominently among individuals in the helping professions. Volunteers, those religious communities who went to help others, they were helping someone. That person felt better, but these people felt worse. And now we're all in helping professions, right? Because even if you're, a salesperson or something, you pay taxes and you definitely have some relative, friend or acquaintance who is serving or fighting and you support them and so on. Well, and these dedicated people often burn out, because burnout is truly burnout is absolutely impossible if you're not genuinely on fire. And we are indeed on fire. You fall deeply in love, and that's it. You're completely all in. A brand new job, some exciting activity. You start a business with just a mere couple of coins. I don't know, perhaps you're selling something. You're already making all the necessary arrangements. You're really quite fired up about it. So if you're the kind of person who never really gets fired up about anything at all, then you won't burn out either. But if you're truly, incredibly passionate, then you will inevitably burn out. And why do you burn out? Because you devote so much of your valuable time and energy to your work, your relationships, to whatever it is you're truly passionate about. And you push aside everything else, everything that should be in your life, in yourself. Like, oh, I didn't get enough sleep, or I missed something, or, yeah, I skipped meeting up with friends. Well, what barbecue, for God's sake? Are you living in the present? Or say, reading a book that's not for work, or not trendy enough to talk about it with the right people. But then there's the stuff that's embarrassing, like operating a Kamaz truck in winter. And it turns out that you live that kind of life, the one for which you're not doing all this simply for yourself. You're doing it for some much higher purpose. And sooner or later, within a year to 3 years, you inevitably burn out. And if you add some other significant events to that, like war, the tragic death of someone, or a serious illness, well, you just burn out completely. It turns out that all your energy just isn't enough for yourself. And such basic things like dedicating 2 hours a day to yourself. Well, like I'm sitting there on social media, scrolling through something quite engaging, and scrolling, for example, through these very short videos, your brain actively perceives each individual video, thoroughly interprets it, receives some crucial neurons, and then signals are promptly sent. And you watch 250 of them a day. And then you're like, oh, I'm so tired. I'm resting, but it doesn't get any easier. Of course not, because you're not actually resting at all. And you're burning out. Oh, you worked hard at your job. You come home and instead of resting, you start thinking, okay, what should I... Maybe I'll pick a fight with my wife. There's a cool idea there. And that's it, and off it goes. That's not rest, not at all. Because I feel some guilt, like I'm not doing enough there. Or why am I not at war? Or why am I not at war? And then my neighbor, for example, started a greenhouse, sells some cucumbers, and made a lot of money. So no matter what you do, you're still not good enough. I have an acquaintance who's a researcher working abroad. International, really great. I envy her, in a good way. I really love how she does all of it. She describes it beautifully. She has patience. And she says, I feel guilty because I'm not at the front. I said, well, excuse me for the sexism, but you're a girl. And secondly, very few people can really do what you do. A lot of people can do this. Just keep going, keep going, keep going. That's why there's burnout. What can you do to avoid burning out? You need to be a wonderful therapeutic egoist. Whatever you do, you come first. You'll never be able to do something great if you neglect yourself. Well, I mean, you will certainly do something, but you definitely won't finish it. You'll just work yourself to death. Volunteering during the 2014 to 2015 period. The very best volunteers I worked with back then, you don't see them around anymore. Some left, some got disillusioned, some burned out. Because everything was going there, everything was heading that way. Well, maybe that's actually why we survived. But people made such a sacrifice. And at some point, what you're doing becomes much more important than you are. I won't take a single day off, I won't ever rest. And if you're truly working hard, if you're burning with incredible energy, you stand out right away. Oh, there's Mykola over there. That guy, he'll never say no. And now Mykola's got a mountain of all this work piled up on him. And maybe he used to be such a great guy. And imagine now he's got depression, or maybe PTSD, or he just snapped and left, either joined the army or went to church. I don't know. Maybe he developed some kind of addiction because he just can't handle it all anymore. That's why we need to learn to dedicate time to ourselves. And here's where people always catch me, like, but what about work? I'm not talking about just thinking only about yourself. Like, in the morning it's me, at lunch it's me, in the evening it's still me, and at night it's me again. No way, you just need to carve out a little corner for yourself. Just so that you can... And it all comes down to this. Don't forget that besides your super important job, there are also things like your health, taking care of yourself, self-education, not just in the area where you work, but also in your profession. And even beyond that. Something spiritual about our higher values. This isn't necessarily about religion, but rather about spirituality itself. It's also about your environment. Let me remind you, your environment isn't your family or your job. Not your family. Who do you communicate with besides your family and your job? There are people, and if you don't have them, I have news. You don't have environment. But I'm friends with those I work with. Really, what are you talking about? Everything revolves around work. During the initial period, before you eventually get truly tired, you're burning with an intense passion for your important work, you've already become seasoned professionals, and you're moving forward, so to speak, on complete autopilot. Then, unfortunately, burnout truly sets in when absolutely nothing brings you joy or satisfaction anymore. You're not even suffering yet, you keep going to work, but whereas before you used to be happy about everything, now nothing makes you happy anymore. And there are also these points, like you stop praising yourself. You're not putting yourself down, but you've stopped praising yourself too. You're constantly exhausted. Physically, mentally, you just don't have any... Emotions are dulled, they're there, but it's like you went to an amazing stand-up show, paid a ton of money, and they're even donating to the armed forces of Ukraine. You go, everyone is laughing, and you're just like... Those are all the emotions. So something amused you there, but before you would have been like, God, I really need to go to the bathroom. I can't hold it. This is just, how is the stand-up? Oh, everyone was laughing so hard. It was great. And you and me? Honestly, I just didn't feel it. There's some kind of cynicism, maybe. And the main thing is, you've stopped being productive. Super productive, in fact. When I talk to bosses, to managers, I always say, if you clearly see signs of burnout, if you truly want to keep your valuable staff, your dedicated team members, you absolutely need to give them days off, regular breaks, some kind of essential rest. Do something meaningful for them, because they need to recover properly in order to keep working effectively. If it's just work, work, work all the time, they lose their effectiveness. And this shows up at your workplace too. That's the problem in the army as well. We're in the military now and we don't have weekends. There are vacations. Great, awesome, fantastic. But there are no weekends. Because it's war, well, that's how it is. Russia, there's no such thing as a day off, sorry. You always have to be on duty. And here, we genuinely need to come up with something truly effective for the military, something substantial they can actively do to properly recharge and rejuvenate. And that's precisely where the crucial cultural front thoughtfully comes in. Furthermore, we should also consider including some enjoyable and beneficial recreational activities too, so that burnout doesn't happen. Because if there is, the ultimate peak of burnout is when a young doctor who just graduated from medical school comes out and is just, well, kind of like a fool, I'll cure everyone, really. I want to. Or a teacher. There truly are teachers who are born for this. I'll bring knowledge. And the absolute peak of burnout is when this doctor, the one who thought, I'll cure everyone, this fool says, God, well, everyone will die anyway. Well, it's all fine. I'll prescribe some pills, let grandma take them. Or this teacher says, the worst thing on this planet, on Earth, is children. You can't help them with anything. The teacher just needs to stop being a teacher. It doesn't mean she got stupid, she just burned out here. She should go into business, for example, and preferably not in education. Or go into show business, something like that. So this doctor has to switch somewhere, to another field, something different. And we're scared because it's 15 years of experience. Can you imagine? Go and apply to acting school. I don't know, open your own bar in the village and do something. But just staying like this, no. According to research, about 64% of people on planet Earth have experienced burnout. We can't say anything about Ukraine. We can't say anything about Ukraine at all. There are no studies because they would be irrelevant. And, go to Lviv. I don't want to say that everyone there is like that. Yoo-hoo! The cultural capital. But still, there's sadness, melancholy, a sense of sorrow there. Of course, the portrait is different, say, between Uzhhorod and Pavlohrad in the Dnipropetrovsk region. But to say that everyone is completely and utterly burned out would be wrong. And in order for us to burn out less, we truly need to understand where we have lost ourselves in our own lives. And then there are those individuals who only truly care about themselves. It's not because they're so incredibly great. They simply ran away. They're clearly compensating. In actual truth, they're a very tiny minority. There are indeed very few of them. But they suffer from being in an unreal world. That is, it seems to them that things are really like that. Especially those who value social media, who think that what's there is how things really are. I'd also like it if some Marvel heroes actually existed. We make our own lives heroic. Yes.
By the way, speaking of emotional burnout and how we express these profound emotions in folklore in general, how is this truly reflected in the rich tapestry of folklore and in the lives of previous generations, so to speak? Our folklore is actually very emotional. Songs, tales, everything that is built on emotion, often on the emotions of the characters.
And on murders as well. I love Ukrainian fairy tales. It's just, I don't know if anyone has ever filmed one to shoot a Ukrainian fairy tale as it really was. Someone gets their head chopped off, buried in the ground, and so on.
Not just Ukrainian fairy tales.
Each one, in fact.
Yes, exactly. And I was told a very interesting episode. We were working on another project about the magic world of Ukrainian folklore. It will be released soon, or maybe it has already come out by the time people are watching or listening to this show. And there, our consultant has shared with us how she once talked with an elderly woman when she was traveling around Ukraine collecting songs and folklore. She was actually researching folklore, collecting songs. And the elderly woman said such a wonderful phrase. Now you're all in your phones, but once we were in songs. This is actually what you're talking about with reels. When you sit in the evening watching 100 reels, and it's a completely different level compared to when people used to go out and pour their emotions into songs. And what's special about folklore is that there's no standard text. Everyone can always add something of their own, using a certain melody, singing something in their own way, and that's a form of self-expression, probably even art therapy.
I myself am from a village in Prikapatia, and everyone sang to me. I have a lot of questions about the high quality of the performance. Well, it was what it was, but they sang. And in 2017, I was lucky enough to go to Switzerland with a group of veterans. There was a man there who was originally from Ukraine, a veteran of the Afghan war, well, actually the Soviet one. He had some kind of business there. He actually owned a hotel. And he said, I can bring some guys over, but they need to have a doctor with them and a psychologist. So they sent me as the psychologist. So basically we told the guys, like, we're veterans, we do everything by the book. It's important for us to keep up appearances, stay neutral, we have to behave ourselves. And we had a lot of alcohol there. And then the owner says, guys, let's have a drink. We're like, no, we don't drink, kind of hesitating. And he says, just some wine, nothing else. So we took a sip, and among us was a seasoned veteran, someone a bit over 50 years of age, and already feeling quite good, plus the majestic mountains, on my word. Well, we're truly the best. Don't mind if we sing a little, and he says, please do sing something for us. So we're sitting there, there are about 12 of us in total, and he starts with something like, the pine tree was burning, and everyone slowly joins in. Some know the exact words, some don't, but they pick it up quite quickly. This Swiss gentleman is almost in tears, and there were a lot of Asian people around. Let's just say they were Chinese. They're all rather small, none of them on their phones, just intently watching us. We were outside, the table was quite large and expansive, and it was really cool because no one had planned it, it just spontaneously happened. Because you're far from your home, Switzerland is indeed quite far away, and by the 9th day, you're already thinking to yourself, why am I even here? Even though it seemed like a super top-notch and excellent place, you just deeply wanted to sing. The very best thing to do is to sing something Ukrainian. I have a lot of criticism for Ukrainian cinema in general, but I'll say, whoever made Propala Hramota, that's still the absolute best so far, in my opinion. When a Cossack's soul truly cries out, that's when he sings, and that's just precisely how it is. And when I see our guys somewhere, someone humming a tune or singing a song, it's like, oh, Propala Hramota, everyone probably knows that classic film by now. I really like that it's still so relevant, even now, in this present moment, and maybe that's also a profound expression of us that we deeply want to sing.
Well, and Ukrainians are, in general, a singing nation. This shows itself on many levels. So, let's continue a bit more about folklore, and specifically about songs. Probably it's in songs that these emotions are reflected the most. At the front, people sing folk songs.
At the front, people often sing, I can't precisely say that we all gather together with our comrades around a warm campfire or anything quite like that, but in certain specific places and situations, it certainly does happen. It's more or less an individual thing, generally speaking. I have noticed that those individuals who had this in their culture, they invariably bring it with them to the front. For example, we have a young girl in our brigade who is from Western Ukraine. She is quite religious, but I never really asked her whether it comes from her family or her immediate environment. She would often sing there, and it never seemed at all strange. For instance, no one ever made any remarks about it whatsoever. Okay, we all know how to sing because everyone sings, but sometimes it would be better if they didn't. And it doesn't necessarily have to be something traditional. It could truly be anything at all. You could just simply sing something. It could even be something super modern and contemporary. Well, I'm not really talking about, I don't know, some major global trends, but people do indeed sing something. So this particular expression definitely exists. And it's not like I would ever say, let's go, I'll show you. Absolutely not. But it just comes out very naturally and situationally. I think that, we are continuing this tradition of being a singing nation. It will persist, but I believe it will be especially strong after people return. Because over there, it's not always possible, but a lot of people often listen to their favorite music. If you look at music from the perspective of boring psychology, it's all about rhythm and vibration. So these are two things that are very important. Rhythm, because everything about us is rhythmic. Our heart beats in rhythm. We have cyclical moments, and everything relates to vibration. Frankly speaking, explosions, gunshots, everything related to the military, it's all about vibration. And music is truly something that can either bring you back to your current reality or, on the contrary, completely save you from this very reality. And these vibrational phenomena are something profoundly familiar to us all, deeply ingrained in our everyday experiences. If, for us, a sudden vibration can serve as an immediate and potent warning of impending danger, such as the concussive force of a distant explosion, the sharp, distinct click of a mechanism, or the rhythmic, rapid-fire sound of a machine gun burst echoing in a steady cadence, then conversely, when you consciously engage in an act like singing a melody or deliberately tapping out a rhythmic beat, it creates a powerful sensation of being entirely in control. In these moments, you yourself become the direct and intentional creator of a specific kind of resonant vibration and its unique personal rhythm. In this way, the psyche truly tells you that you are in control of the entire situation. And where we simply can't express our sorrow, our joy, our sadness, or something truly beautiful, we can do all of that through creativity.
And this is also possible even in some, if we return again to the archaic, to some ancient shamanic practices, where rhythm also plays a very important role.
Ancient. Were you long ago in the church? It is widely used everywhere, even in our time. It's a particular kind of manipulation, not from a negative point of view, but simply rather as a simple, observable fact. Roughly speaking, if there is a large crowd, and you were to shout "Glory to Ukraine" to them, everyone will respond to you. You skillfully manipulated them. They did exactly what you wanted them to do, but it's a very simple, almost elementary trick, because you could just say, for example, the square root of 47, and everyone would be like, wait a moment, let me quickly get my calculator. So you successfully out-manipulated them, and now we are also effectively using this. Yes, it is just as you say. The historical roots of this phenomenon go way back, but it is still widely used now, everywhere, at large-scale mass events and at all sorts of public gatherings and things. For example, when we're at the training center, perhaps during a period of recovery or rehabilitation, if the circumstances are safe and appropriate, we often engage in communal singing to them. Everyone participates and sings together in unison. Additionally, we solemnly recite the Decalogue of the Ukrainian nationalist, not by singing it, but by saying it out loud with clear articulation. And this recitation is always accompanied by the full prologue, which provides essential context and introduction. So that's how it is. Not all soldiers are great singers, but we still do something like that. Well, the oldest song we currently have, there was a study in our group that clearly showed songs indeed have a significant impact. For example, they carefully took distinct songs, gave them to groups of 5 individuals, and we meticulously observed specifically the resulting group behavior. And in the group where they sang, "Hey, let's fill our cups to the brim," they drank. Not everyone, not on command. But the amount of alcohol consumed in that group, which is prohibited, was several times higher than in the other groups. And it wasn't intentional. They just wanted to see how it would affect them. Because it wasn't simply, let's get drunk because it's fun. No, there was a deeper meaning to it. So, in other words, that's a direct influence. Well, if you truly listen to Russian rap music, you'll undoubtedly become a really, truly terrible person. So please don't do things like that, absolutely not. What you sing and what you listen to should be very, very close to your heart and your personal values. And this could potentially be a comprehensive answer to your specific request. But you can also truly strive for this, for, well, something really good. That's precisely why it's truly important for music to be, and if it's far too complicated for you, you simply won't ever reach that music. But it really, truly has to be right here with you, always. So, I don't know, maybe there are people who say, I don't like any music, but the truth is they just haven't found their own yet. If you truly don't like music, perhaps you just haven't created your very own yet. It's essentially the same as, we don't like anything, everything is bad. The government steals, people are idiots. Our history is going down, so become a history. Show yourself. It's not like you just take the answer and move on. With your own life, at least. And it's the same with music, with folklore.
You mentioned manipulation. Are emotional people easier to manipulate?
Yes, emotional people are indeed. On the one hand, they're easier to manipulate, but there are some boundaries you just can't cross. And those people who express their emotions less, they're harder to manipulate, but most likely, these people will also achieve less in the social sphere. So there are pros here too, and there's emotional intelligence. Yeah, exactly that. Because we have EQ. There's this rational intelligence, IQ, and there's also emotional intelligence, EQ. Everyone has emotional intelligence, except there's one mental illness. I forgot, it has a complicated name. They don't have emotions. These people are incapable of relationships, they can't function in society, they have no emotions, and it's a bit scary, and they have it as a disability. Oh, it's neither good nor bad, it's just a type of condition. It's just that some people have it more developed and some less so. And unlike IQ, unlike rationality, it can also be developed, but it's difficult, it's more innate. That emotional intelligence, it's more flexible, it's more the one that is more adaptable, and it can be developed a little bit. But in the past, no one ever truly spent significant energy on developing emotional intelligence. We can also talk about other important soft skills. Before, you were defined by the techniques you mastered, by how much of a professional you were. But now, let's take a cook, some chef, for example. In the past, what did a chef need to do? Cook well. Now a chef has to communicate well, understand problems, set prices, make sure some dishes are cheaper during promotions and more expensive at other times. All these things, that's a lot about soft skills, about the skills you will gain. And now, if you're a super mega top, but if you're a toxic slut, then most likely you won't be this top for long. It's necessary that he were some, like, mega. And if this is some kind of genius, well, a really mega talented person, then they are just limited to some people who know how to communicate with him so that the product comes out. Because this mega genius person simply won't sell anything, won't create anything. There will be no communication from him.
Let me remind you that today in the Archetype of the Nation project studio, we are talking about emotionality with military psychologist Andrii Kozinchuk. Let's return a bit to the national scale. You mentioned that when you were choosing your education, you were deciding between psychology, the military, and political science.
And for example, political science just happened to be on the list. Like, where can I apply? I didn't become a translator because I didn't have enough money. For a bribe, sorry. That was the terrible year of 2002.
Actually, my question now is related to that. It's a bit psychological, a bit political science related. So,
go ahead.
If we talk about our emotionality as a trait of the nation, it is quite significant. We've already talked a lot about this today. And we can even recall various, indeed, even recent instances of emotional displays on the international stage. Overall, is our emotionality an inherent advantage for us as a nation, or is it more of a negative aspect? And should we be working on this in a more competent way?
That's an excellent question. We can't change our emotionality. We can pretend a little like, look at us, we're such super professionals. But no one will believe us. If we consider that significant incident in the Oval Office, when people aggressively attacked Volodymyr Alexandrovich and he clearly showed his emotionality, all Ukrainians universally said, my God, how incredibly calm he is. I would have wrecked the office, yeah, or thrown something, spat on the floor, and walked out. A super mega diplomat said that he didn't come out after that press conference. He canceled it. Because after the meeting, he was supposed to have his press conference there. Like, that's a display of those super emotions. I mean, everyone really perceives it quite differently. It's truly important that these emotions of ours, well, that they actually work to our advantage. Because again, if we get too emotional, we won't get very far either. We also had some nobility young gentlemen, and there were also serfs, and we could end up back there. Actually, that's really cool. So, my honest answer is kind of tricky. If these genuine emotions truly help us to show who we really are, then people will simply believe you. And conversely, no one will ever believe you if you consistently stick to those boring, dry, and uninspiring things. You really need to look at a truly drunk professor, an academic, who's almost 80 years old. And he was like that his whole life, just a guy with books. But look at him now. He's not stiff at all. He's a joker. He sings, he dances, and he's 80, mind you. And no one believed him when he was so reserved. But now everyone believes him. We need to be truly emotional, but what exactly did earlier studies show? What emotions is essentially the limbic system. When the limbic system is working, everything else shuts down. Falsehood. You can still control it somehow, in some way. And I had such a case, a similar situation. And the veteran institution is very cool. It's a subgroup in Kiev. It's very famous and well known. Veterano Pizza. And we spent a lot of time there before the full-scale war. And I went there for something, had a meeting with someone, handed something over. And patrol police officers like to go there, not because they get a discount there, but because the atmosphere there is just nice. And the patrol police officers came in. They have a lunch break. It's an important point because they're human. They need to go to the bathroom, wash their hands, eat and rest. And they eat there in uniform with their weapons sitting there. And they're discussing something, eating pizza. And people would come up to them and say, how can you even eat here? Someone is being robbed right now. Something like that, because it just seems so abnormal. Like you're patrol officers and you're eating. But it's not like they're drinking there or beating someone up, because it's the police, right? I just don't know what kind of people these are. Patrol police officer. Maybe these are the worst patrol police officers in Ukraine. But they're doing completely logical things. But someone picked on them. What are you even doing? And that's why we'll never be able to forgive the president for making some joke. Or some, I don't know, very cheerful government official, perhaps. You have to behave a certain way. That's how it's done. So I can't come to a definite conclusion. Yes, that is something we absolutely have to keep shouting at everyone, constantly swearing and so on. But also, because of NATO, to come into this entire situation, it's truly impossible. At the very least, when veterans come to receive some essential service and see a totally emotionless service provider, they simply don't trust them. They're a little afraid of them. So everything should be within reason. That's how it is here. We absolutely do not need to be a Nordic nation, and we certainly do not need to be some kind of Southerners either. Italy, and with its southern people, of course, indeed, we need to remain Ukrainians, and then we'll succeed.
Staying Ukrainian is a great motto. I also wanted to ask about your experience at the front since 2014 as a military psychologist. Has the attitude toward military psychologists changed during this time? Because if we talk about civilian life in Ukraine, unlike in Europe or the US, for a very long time it wasn't trendy to see psychologists, though now the situation is probably changing a bit. I don't know, you probably know more about this. How is it in the armed forces?
We still haven't completely gotten rid of the enduring and profound consequences of the punitive psychiatry of the Soviet Union at all, even now, to this very day. Now, the general attitude towards psychologists is a bit better, but still not entirely complete. So, why does a military psychologist exist in the army? Because they are needed wherever there are people. And the fact that we have a psychologist with us, he's just like us. When he feels bad, he gets sad, he can swear, he can crack a joke, or sometimes not say anything at all, just listen. So that's normal, that's okay. Plus, when we go somewhere, we don't impose ourselves, even in the military. We say, I won't go where you don't want me to. If I ask you how things are at home and you say you don't want to talk about it, I won't be offended. I respect that a lot. It's your choice not to talk about it. We'll talk about whatever you want. It's gradually getting better, but I wish it would improve a bit more. Young people are truly the driving force behind a healthy and positive attitude towards psychologists. For many young people, going to see a psychologist is not even considered a big deal anymore. Indeed, for young individuals, taking care of their mental health is becoming increasingly important and a priority. Right now, I'm not fighting for psychologists, I'm fighting for mental health. I might annoy you, you might not trust me, I might seem like a shady guy. But whatever you do, don't devalue your own mental state. That's what the fight is about right now. Compared to the year 2014, there are approximately 10 times more psychological consultations and communications available now. That's just my very subjective feeling because it's more or less like that. Of course, that's still not quite enough, but the key point here is the dynamic. We're growing, and that's truly great. The approach to psychology in the military is changing overall. We now have combat stress control groups, that is, dedicated psychological units. Now you can join a community and discuss a particular topic. You can say, look, here's a situation. Right now, together with some people, some regimental staff, we want to establish supervision for military psychologists. There is no such thing in the military yet. So somehow, a psychologist for psychologists, yes, a mentor to whom you can and have the legal right to disclose a problem. Some issue, for example. Because, for example, I can't go to my commander with this. Let's say a certain unfortunate event happened to a guy. I can say, look, there's a situation, give him permission to have a day off, maybe half a day. He was somewhere else. Or let's give him some leave or something like that. Or not in the unit. Let's give him some other work, something interesting. But I don't reveal what happened. He tells me because of something with the commander, but he doesn't tell me what exactly. So he says, and now, we're developing in this situation. I can confidently say that we're developing much faster and more efficiently than those regular conventional units, because they only truly started to scratch themselves, to really begin to move and make progress. This only occurred after the Vietnam War. And then, even more significantly, after the year 2001. Iraq and the invasion didn't happen just like that. But for them, everything was very slow. I also don't like our pace either. What I dislike even more is the attitude from above that they don't see us. That is, there is a huge demand in society. Wherever you hear someone talk about care, about veterans, psychology is everywhere. But not from above. I would like a bit more of a push in this direction, because people don't use psychologists. And here, yes, everything is changing dynamically. There is still a lot of room to grow. I'm sure that if we do everything right from the perspective of psychology and emotions, how managers use it, how to apply it, then we can actually become pioneers and teach others. And that's why NATO should take us in. Not because they can help us, but because we can help them. It's the same story as with drones. Recently, the Americans reported that they made their first successful drop from a drone. One of my pilots was like, that's cool. But they're not developing very quickly, even though they've had UAVs for a long time. But their UAVs are the kind that can lift a 100-ton plane and fly it wherever you want. But this thing for $500, it's the same story with their mindset. The things we are implementing aren't just about the psychological aspects, but rather about their overall effectiveness. Because, for example, people have been fighting in this conflict for over 3 long and arduous years of full-scale war. That's definitely not right at all. In general, it is simply and fundamentally wrong. Yeah, because look, you have a situation where there's a significant war going on, and you have to consciously and deliberately go into a very dangerous zone where the chances that you'll actually get killed will significantly increase. And you just really truly hope that you'll indeed make it there safely. It's not truly about you. It just means that your brain is analyzing the current situation in such a way that this is indeed the only viable way to preserve your deeply held values. Those essential values could be your beloved family, your established and cherished way of life, or something truly sacred and profoundly important to you. And you know that this is more important, and you are ready, well, to make a sacrifice, even if it's just for yourself, to make an effort to preserve it.
To fight for it?
Yes, to fight for it. And some people do this consciously, some subconsciously, some just follow trends or feel their own guilt, and so on. But there is a lot of psychology involved here, and it's very important for us to have this kind of shared unity, because here, you simply can't just assign a good psychologist to a unit and expect to solve absolutely everything. If the commander is truly inadequate, if, I don't know, essential fuel is being stolen, if there are no fundamental values, well, you just get pushed out of the system. And that's exactly how the system is set up, so that it doesn't work for us. Right now, we have a lot of great initiatives, methods, and innovations. There's a whole lot of everything. The only thing we don't have is a system. In America, they don't really have all this, but they do have a system. Sorry for comparing to America, but in America, they do a great deal of extensive research, spend a significant amount of resources, energy, and dedicated effort on development, have a large number of officials and advanced satellites, all to precisely figure out where they truly need to go. Here, as a rule, it's more of an emotional response. We just rush in that direction. What's going on there? How is it? It's new, interesting, let's do something. And I wish we could add a bit more meaning to it.
Basically, they have systematization and rationality, while we have emotionality.
Exactly, I agree. Exactly. Sorry, we started off in that direction and realized that this applies not only to some song or creativity in general, but it touches all aspects of our life, which of course is influenced by these emotions. It's simply an integral and fundamental part of our everyday life. And you know, it truly starts very early on in our childhood. A child is born, and at some point, after 9 months, they learn to sit up, and everyone is like, hooray, they're sitting. Then, at 11 months, they learn to stand. And at 1 year old, they started walking, and everyone was like, oh, that's great. And then, after learning to walk, they learned to run. And then they quickly learned to dash around. Like that, clearly showing their emotions. And right away, usually it's the loving grandmother who starts saying, don't run, don't shout, don't let out all your adrenaline. Like, tell your adrenal glands not to inject too much into your blood and so on. In other words, they suppress these emotions. Again, recess at school, 3rd grade, they run out, I don't know, maybe now everyone just goes online or something. Before it was like this, throwing rags around. Everyone would tell, dear kids, please don't show emotions, just sit there like a dead person. That's it. But inside, everything boils, so they keep pressing down on these emotions. That's it. Why are you smiling? Why are you crying? Why are you... You come in a good mood and they're like, what's with you? Why are you grinning? Why you come in looking sad? Why are you gloomy? You'll bring down the whole group. Nothing ever seems right. And it's important for us to learn at least a little how to support each other in these emotions.
Because there are emotions, but also there are traditions, an image of the ideal Ukrainian, what a Ukrainian should or shouldn't be, and what to strive for.
Yeah, but it's a very collective image. It doesn't really show itself. I don't know, well, there are some established standards, but being Ukrainian is a truly very diverse and multifaceted thing. It's not something you can easily idealize or simplify. It's really not worth it, but well, honestly, it's better not to try to improve it. Better to just...
Well, it's about what people would say. That is, it's always important what people would say.
Yeah. My grandma used to say that to me. Well, there weren't many weeds and they...
Not just yours, probably everyone's.
What will the neighbors say? What's up with the neighbors? They're fine. They have good grandchildren. Oh, I'm a bad grandson. Okay. From this, that's where these traumas started. But traumas also have to be there because you can't solve some super problem if you hadn't had that experience as a child.
To teach a person to manage their emotions, to work with them. Is this really possible, or do you always need to work with a psychologist?
No, it is possible. Here, what's important is not so much working with psychologists as it is having the right knowledge. If it's easier for you to watch this on YouTube, but from someone very adequate, intelligent, and certified, that's okay. If you listen to a coach who talks about your inner chakra and so on, then probably not. It's just that a psychologist is probably faster and safer. Again, what does it actually mean to learn to manage? Don't confuse learning to stop or effectively express your emotions with being genuinely happy about absolutely everything in the world. No, but if you thoughtfully go to some mindfulness class to truly learn to appreciate what you have right here and now, or you visit a professional therapist or attend a really good and insightful lecture, then, believe me, you'll certainly get a lot of profound answers to important questions you never even explicitly asked yourself. Like why I sometimes feel inexplicably sad for absolutely no apparent reason, or why I feel wonderfully happy just because. And most importantly, you'll truly know what to do with all of it, because you've always had emotions. You certainly have them now, and you'll undoubtedly continue to have them throughout your life. Maybe more, maybe less. The question is what to do about it. And with a psychologist, it will just be much easier and a lot safer for you to figure things out in a comfortable and supportive environment. But in general, and not to sound like an advertisement, you should go to a psychologist when you can't cope anymore. And if you think, I'm fine, you really should get yourself a psychologist before you reach the point where you can't really handle things anymore. Because sooner or later, you'll find yourself in that situation anyway. You don't have to go to them all the time, up until that moment. But it's good to have at least 1 or 2 sessions with a psychologist. You'll also find out, oh, my guy or my psychologist is super comfortable. At the very least, they don't annoy me. That's already good. Or they don't scare you. And then, when everything happened to me, I needed help, I made an appointment or he scheduled a meeting. I came and everything worked out. Up until that moment, if you can manage to enjoy life, that's great. It's hard to do it on your own. Why is it so incredibly challenging and difficult to truly learn and master this complex emotional management? Because in reality, it is not nearly as simple or straightforward as it might initially appear to you. Just recently, I had a scheduled meeting that, in actual fact, unexpectedly turned out not to be a meeting at all, which was quite surprising and confusing. A date. That's it. I liked the girl. She was smart, beautiful. Some time passed, we had sex, it was great, awesome. And you enjoy it. But even if everything is fine, you still feel like some kind of idiot. And you're always afraid because you had previous experience. And you tell someone else, but there's nothing to tell. Because there was really nothing to latch onto at all. She was beautiful, smart, everything about her suited you. You tried to tell some jokes. She laughed, which is a good sign. But you still have a bad feeling and guilt, but there's nothing to hold on to. And a psychologist will dig into you. That either you had some past experience, or maybe it's low self-esteem, things like that. That's why it's useful to go to a psychologist. Like going to a psychologist is like looking at yourself in a mirror with good lighting. You can see the pimple, but your mom says you're handsome. So the psychologist will tell you what's good and what's not.
You yourself are a very emotional person. Anyone who watched could see it. Anyone who listened could hear it. What emotion did you feel during our conversation?
I'm interested. It's like, a quiet joy to talk about this. Because despite how emotional Ukrainians are, we don't really like to talk about emotions. And for some reason, it seems that an overly emotional person is not a very serious person. But the crucial thing is, if you were to speak to these servicemen in a highly academic language, you simply wouldn't be able to effectively get your important point across. This applies to all the discussions about naps, neurons, and those who are overachievers. Some will take it as a joke and others will say yes. It's not that you're not smart, you just understand different things. That's why I like to talk about such things, the unpopular ones. But it's important. Why? Because it accompanies us every single day. I feel really quite comfortable talking about this.
Thank you. We actually created this project to talk about the essential values that are characteristic of Ukrainians. Because in my personal opinion, it's important to talk about this, to talk with many different people who have their own unique opinions, to write in the comments what you truly think about it. This is actually quite important in order to fully understand who we truly are and what we are truly like and what we can ultimately become. Not just who we are right now, but who we can potentially be, who we can truly become.
So, a question for you. How do you really feel about this? Or maybe not even emotionally at all, just actually. How does your environment react? Some people are happy and supportive, while others are the opposite. Some people just get really annoyed by the way you express yourself. Write to us, we'll read it. We're interested.
To wrap up, a blitz interview. 7 short questions, 7 short answers for Andrii. They don't have to be very short, just as they come out.
I'll do my best.
What trait do you really value most in people?
Openness and sincerity.
Which do you consider the worst?
Closed off and insincerity.
What inspires you?
I am truly inspired by the wonderful people I live and work with every single day, and by the many small yet incredibly meaningful acts of heroism. Those are genuinely what inspire me. I particularly like it when a compassionate mother gently hugs a crying child, offering comfort instead of harshly yelling at them. I also appreciate how people bravely go to safe shelters during an urgent air raid alert. An air raid alert means a missile is coming your way, you could die. And they take their cat with them. And it actually happened to me that my dear mom spent the entire night in the subway a few times, because we live in Loktyanivka, you see. And it makes me very sad that my mom is in the subway, it's just not right. And I always ask her to take pictures of the animals with their owners. And she brags to me saying, "There are such good dogs next to me." One of them spent the night there, just an amazing dog. These are like little micro-heroics to me. I really like it. I like it when a 50-year-old dad calls his wife, and she's not young either, and he says, "I love you." I mean, he's not embarrassed. These are the kinds of things that really make you want to live. No matter how much Ukrainians mess up, there will always be 10 times more of these micro-heroics that I see every day, and they really give life meaning. Our existential questions are actually found in these super inspiring little things. For me, it's really... And I'm also really inspired by young people, despite the terrible music they listen to. I say this as an old grump now. But what they actually do, how they truly grow, I don't fully understand them, and that's perfectly okay. That's quite normal. But I can clearly see that they're significantly better than we ever were. I'm already 40 years old, so I can confidently say this. I don't understand precisely how, but I can really feel that they're genuinely better, that they are indeed the next generation. People didn't understand me either when I was just a kid. That's okay.
What scares you?
I'm afraid that everything will be for nothing. That's my biggest fear. I don't want to speak for all the soldiers. I'll speak for myself. I'm truly afraid that everything we are doing, that it will all ultimately be for absolutely nothing. It's not just simply about some so-called Russian narrative about what the actual point is. It's not just about killing or driving out the enemy forces. It's profoundly about us creating a truly safe zone, where you can walk down the street and genuinely feel safe and secure. It's when you let your child go outside to play and you don't worry. Well, perhaps you might worry that they'll get a splinter or something similar, but deep down you know they will ultimately be safe. And I am genuinely scared that after the prolonged war, after a hard-won victory, we will inevitably be left with a pervasive sense of aggression, profound distrust, deep-seated cynicism, and truly terrible lingering fears. And not everything will go smoothly after it's over, but they're absolutely essential to have this kind of positive momentum. There will be things such as that, but we still need to come through it. And what truly scares me is that ultimately all of this effort might be for nothing. I try to push these thoughts away, and I can do something to make sure it doesn't turn out that way. But that's my biggest fear, that all of this was for nothing.
What kept you going during the hardest moments of your life?
My circle of people. They're the coolest people on earth. These are truly the people I am fighting for. And of course, my dear mom, indeed. They gave me faith. I run a channel. It's a psycho-educational channel where we do outreach. I was already thinking maybe I should quit because it's unclear. You're a blogger, a soldier, a psychologist. Dude, who even are you? But then you read some comment, Mr. Andrii, you said something and I talked to my husband. Thank you. Or, I don't know what to do with my daughter. We ask, how are you doing? Because you worry about your daughter more than about yourself. I'm not saying you're right. I'll work on myself and my daughter. I'll get better. You realize that it's not for nothing. That's what keeps you going. My faith in people is based on people. But faith in people is really just some kind of expectation from people. And it never matches reality. And we learn to speak, to show emotions with those people we care about, like with my unit, with my people, the ones I surround myself with. The coolest people in the world, honestly. So much support, so much from them. They might not even know it, even though I try to tell them all the time how much they mean to me. They truly don't even fully realize just how much their simple words and their thoughtful actions genuinely mean to me. And it was really hard. And it's still hard. But what we've gone through over these 3.5 years, all of these hardships, God grant that everyone around you would react the way these people did. In the hardest moments, it wasn't criticism, it was support. Not praise, but rather just really strong, unwavering, and consistent support. And I feel kind of guilty that I'm not as good at supporting them as they are at supporting me. And I wanted to learn that super skill from them. They didn't study for this. It's just that, well, they have this experience, so they did it. And that really supported me a lot.
The main goal or purpose of your life?
I want people to become at least 1% more psychologically healthy than they are now. No more, no less, because I can't do more than that. I wouldn't have enough time for myself, personally. If it just happens to give someone a really good trait, like drinking more water, that's absolutely enough. I haven't achieved anything more significant. But if all my, let's say, 100,000 dedicated viewers drink 10% more water because of my influence, that would be truly impactful. Then my life, everything, wasn't in vain. I used to truly want to save the entire world, to preserve Ukraine's national identity, and to solve all of the pressing problems. But if I can just do one thing, like love myself a little more, just a little more, then my mission is accomplished. Right now, I'm still far from that mission.
If you had to choose 3 words that truly describe Ukrainians as a nation, what would they be?
Wow. Wow. Yes, as a nation. How do you say that in Ukrainian? Like unstoppable. Not timid, but rather unstoppable and resolute. Look, consider on numerous occasions how many times others have stopped without any exaggeration whatsoever. Nations such as Moldova, the sovereign nation of Georgia, the region of Chechnya, and the independent state of Ichkeria. All the developed and civilized countries unanimously said, you should have really surrendered. Unstoppable. That's the first word. The second one, it's hard to put into a word. It's this trait that when we face some great misfortune or problem, we turn it into humor, dark humor, into a song, something like that. It's a kind of characteristic, a projection, probably projective. Not in the sense that we make a projector, but that we turn everything into something else. And third, even though we might not explicitly talk about it, we are definitely united. We currently lack a true sense of unity, all of us together. But the profound concept of family, kinship, and deep friendship, all of these, social connections, yes, exactly, but not in the sense of social services or governmental benefits, but rather in the fundamental sense that we are not merely individualists, but interconnected beings. It's like a grandmother with her garden, always thinking about what the neighbors will say. That's very important to us. And that's why we'll hold on to it. For example, the neighbor, she knows she talks to this other neighbor, she might not even like her, but still, good day, Petrovna, good day, Olegivna, and so on. And these 3 essential things, as I personally see it, you could just keep adding more and more examples here, indefinitely. It's very difficult to explain such processes in simple terms. So, yes. But the very first thing that's truly and indeed characteristic for us is we would have surrendered a very, very long time ago, and our leaders, well, our officials too, but they know for sure, they always constantly and attentively watch to see precisely what the people will ultimately say. They always thoroughly watch. It's just so amazing. Because there are some countries, and this is one of the reasons I love your channel, and I won't say which ones, where they just don't care at all about what anyone says. Or if someone blurts something out, they'll either just sell it as a picture or simply force it through. That kind of thing doesn't fly in Ukraine. Can we still be deceived? This is especially obvious in the military. You can fool a soldier. Well, he's dumb. But you can never fool all the soldiers. The Ukrainian soldier is smart. The Ukrainian soldier, for me, in my life, and here we can talk about Ukraine. You can trick a Ukrainian like this, very easy. Like here, sign a cheap credit or something like that. But you can't fool everyone. Not really. I think that there is a significant number of haters suddenly showed up. I think that's just a narrative, perhaps a bit of a psychological operation. Oh, Ukrainians are greedy. They set each other up. Or let's again play into the narrative about the forced mobilization. No, that's actually not true. This is a very intelligent nation, and I really hope that we finally do something for ourselves, not just for the nation, because besides this too, if it's already the fourth, then it's a routine. It went, but it doesn't always go well, and it always happens in some micro things. A mother gives the tastiest cutlet to her child, but she has to eat it herself. Or the most expensive purchase is for someone else, not for herself. That's not right. You need to do all this for yourself.
Thank you. Today we've already mentioned folklore quite a bit. Have you ever, while listening to Ukrainian songs, looked at them from a psychological perspective, analyzing what emotions of the Ukrainian character or the heroes are expressed there?
No, I haven't. I've thoroughly read and watched some very detailed analyses. There's even a Ukrainian one as well, a YouTube channel where some guys talk really well specifically about music. And my classmate also wrote something about music. But personally never, because I'm a military psychologist, a serious one, so I've never done anything like that.
Wonderful. Then today you have that opportunity. Because we have a segment in our show called The Folklore Chest. And today in this Folklore Chest there are songs. I'm going to ask you to put on the headphones. And the mechanics of this particular segment are very simple indeed. You really don't need to sing. Thank you.
God, at least your subscriber count won't go down.
You need to listen to each song and figure out what emotion is in that song. So, first you listen, and then you say what you heard, what you understood.
I don't know, maybe that'll be okay for you today. It'll be much, much easier for me to really say what emotion I'm feeling right now. Because here I definitely can't go wrong, and some cultural expert might be watching me. And they'll just destroy us all to dust. But I can definitely say what I, at least, am feeling. And I think that in most cases, I'll guess right. All right, let's go. Here we go.
Криниченька, там холодна водиченька, ой у полі криниченька, там холодна водиченька, ой там Роман воли пасе, Катерина воду несе.
It's just, I truly loved it so very much. Most traditional Ukrainian songs, you see, they typically don't depict some kind of grand heroic victory or triumph. Most of them are just about everyday life. And here, well, the challenges of everyday life were indeed very hard. And in this difficult and demanding situation, they remarkably created this truly joyful and wonderful thing about, look, it's not just a well, but a little well. Not just water, but a little water, indeed a tiny, delicate stream. And again, it's truly about the work involved, but there is also a profound joy of existence within it. For me, it's simply, if you truly listen to the rhythm, it is a wonderfully profound joy. But if you listen closely to the lyrics, I'm not just talking about physical labor being hard. The reason I became a psychologist is because intellectual work is harder, in my opinion. Energy-wise, yes, that is certainly true, but still, there is more to it. So for me, this truly represents the profound sublimation of diligent hard work and the rewarding process of finding something genuinely good within it. This is really about the joyful moments in life.
Interesting. The next one.
Час рікою пливе, як зустрів я тебе, як зустрів я тебе, моя пташко.
I listened to this song 618,000 times because it was very, very popular, at least in my part of the Carpathians. And my grandfather loved it very much. I think Hanachuk sang it, I don't remember who. I didn't even know it was a folk song. But okay. This isn't truly about sadness, nor is it about profound sorrow. It's actually about a deep longing for what was genuinely good. Once, the absolute best moment of this person's entire life truly happened, because they watched and observed for a very, very extended period of time. But it remains a very vivid and impactful episode in this life's journey. This is exactly about lyricism in Ukraine. There's a great deal of lyricism and creative expression here. Not so much about truly epic things, like grand battles, although those certainly existed too, those significant things happened. But most of it was actually lyrical. It's a lyrical kind of sadness.
Thank you. Наступне.
Чом ти не прийшов, як місяць зійшов, я тебе чекала. Чи коня не мав, чи стежки не знав, мати не пускала.
Do you know what a classic is? A classic is something that doesn't lose its relevance over the years. I don't know how many years this song has been around. But it hasn't lost its relevance at all. I think this song is at least 200 years old. Here it's disappointment, but this disappointment, well, it's productive. Sort of. The disappointment will eventually end in a silent, profound stillness, in silent resentment. Yeah, and here it's just like that. But God, how incredibly relevant all of this truly is right now. Every single song, it seems, yeah, we have Wi-Fi connectivity now. Wireless electric cars are driving around with this technology. And drones! But nothing has changed.
Nothing has changed with emotions.
Well, that's just the basic setting. It's truly remarkable, perhaps the most profoundly beautiful and deeply cherished emotion that one can ever experience in their lifetime. This feeling, in its purest form, transcends all others, offering an unparalleled sense of joy, contentment, and fulfillment. It's a sensation that uplifts the spirit, enriches the soul, and brings an extraordinary warmth to the heart, making it undeniably the most magnificent and cherished sentiment to ever grace human existence. Its presence transforms ordinary moments into extraordinary memories, leaving an indelible mark of happiness and peace. In general, the profound state of being deeply in love, it's quite comparable to a serious mental illness. You're illogical. You do all sorts of crazy things. You're unproductive. You often do things and you frequently make mistakes, or you just simply can't do them at all. You lose your sleep. You lose your appetite. It's not okay at all, but what euphoria it is. But about this song, look, and if you take this emotion, for example, there's passionate, intense, even overwhelming infatuation. That's eros. It's about sex, about touch. But there's also a quiet kind, a quiet, subtle feeling, that deep trembling inside yourself. And this particular thing, when you truly like that girl, that's exactly what we're talking about. It's a truly dangerous thing, because you haven't fully decoded it for yourself either, leaving you in a state of uncertainty. If there's disappointment, it's because you didn't decode it and everything ended. But here, this is before that. You haven't been disappointed yet. You see really how cool she is. God, she can even smoke a cigarette in 3 drags and drink a bottle of vodka. She's perfect. You tell yourself, dude, she's an angel. She stays silent, you don't know. That's the state of being quietly in love, but it's so cool. When you become like that, you start missing it. Because, for example, you don't have anyone. You go on some dates, and you say, yeah, interesting, what's going on with her? She already has a kid from her ex. But back then, you didn't have any critical thinking. She's perfect. Actually, no. But it's cool. Let's move on. For me, that's classic sadness. Sadness is a state a person is in when something has happened. It's uncritical, and you're not okay with it. That is, you can't influence it. Something has happened, and that's classic sadness. Sadness can also come from decoding jerk behavior. I'm not perfect, but that's exactly how it is here. There's a lot of this in our folklore. It's just good that at least it's expressed in folklore. Never be sad in silence. Talk about it. I'm feeling sad.
Actually, we mentioned today that everything used to be in songs.
Yes.
Ой на горі 2 дубки, ой на горі 2 дубки.
I've heard this song a bit more, about 800,000 times, because at every dinner party, someone would start it. Oh, they'd say 2 oaks, and everyone would join in, and everyone really loved it a lot. A true folk song about everyday life, a good one about courtship. And I, a mother's daughter, was taught how to kiss. Back then, I imagined, how did she even, what did that even look like? A mother's girl taught to kiss. On tomatoes or on what? And a boy to go out, even if just with anyone. This is also a truly joyful, quite flirtatious and youthful song, unlike the actual people who sang it at my table. A song. But also the tempo is really cool here. At an upbeat pace. It used to really annoy me, because there was so much I didn't understand. For 2 years I just listened, because everyone was singing and no one noticed that I was sitting there suffering. But now I actually like it. There was even a time when I sang it sober and everything was fine. But it was cool. Even though sometimes I sing along, even though I probably shouldn't with this voice.
Їх Їхав козак за Дунай, сказав дівчино, прощай, ти конику вороненький неси та гуляй.
Also, it's very much about the military and about Cossack things. I can't really call it a march, because it's a bit slower than the usual 120 beats per minute. But still, it's very much about the military, about valor, about courage. It truly lifts your spirits up. Without thinking too deeply about it, it just works. It truly creates a great, powerful vibe. But it hasn't been heard that often. I can't even very well recall the exact lyrics.
Ти казала, в понеділок підем разом по барвінок.
For me, it's such a truly strange, quite an odd phenomenon that I've most often heard this particular song in some Russian movies. Russians often use it. I mean, it deeply resonates with them in some significant way, and that's really quite cool. It's genuinely fascinating to observe this cultural connection, because here it's profoundly about the mysterious and enigmatic female soul, about all the intricate complexities of that. And if before it seemed quite strange to me, now it's what I would genuinely call, how do you say, a truly humorous story or something delightfully amusing like that. It might initially seem that the woman is rather nasty, perhaps even a deceiver or a blatant gold digger, but in reality she's much, much deeper and more multifaceted, because it's fundamentally about the intricate dynamics of human relationships. And there's a significant amount of humor here, where the inherent imperfection of love, or the often complicated nature of relationships, or something similar to that, is openly acknowledged and embraced. But at the same time, there's no harsh tragedy. You know where the tragedy was for me? There, I don't remember the whole song, but there are these words: die, my dear, die, ooh ha ha, my raven-browed beauty. Seriously, is it really that simple? And I was little too. And everyone die, my dear. That was a mystery to me until now. I'm just saying, I'm not a researcher, not an analyst, but it's just really strange. So we said that in the stories we had, like, oh, they chopped off heads, all that stuff.
And they did it cheerfully.
But they did it very... And here? So it was still fun after all. So, yeah, that's cool. Thanks for this selection. It really took me back to my childhood.
Thank you very much, because honestly, this is a truly very interesting and a profoundly emotional analysis.
Well, how else can you talk about Ukrainian songs? Because if you approach them seriously, you really have to dig deep. And there are people like that too. I know that some books have already been written with a detailed analysis of what was meant.
But this isn't really a scientific discussion here. Our discussion is truly meant to be interesting and engaging for you, our dear viewers and listeners. If you find it interesting, don't forget that your support is very important to us and it inspires us. So please write in the comments what you particularly liked. Tell us more about the songs you also heard and kindly share the emotions those songs truly made you feel. Andrii, I want to offer you a specific task. It's art therapeutic and probably quite familiar to you. We've prepared a base for a drawing. Here are 4 perfectly identical circles, all of them, right here. And here's a marker for you.
A pen. All right, give it here.
Please feel free to draw anything you truly desire in them, and then subsequently we will thoroughly explore and carefully analyze your unique and creative abilities.
My creative abilities are so-so, but art therapy is truly something I deeply love and enjoy. I love art therapy as a form of therapy because it works really well for dealing with sleep disorders and emotions. But I'm not an art therapist. So for me, these are simply just some basic smiley faces, which are really only capable of describing how a particular emotion or feeling is being expressed. However, as for the situation where, if I were to consider myself some kind of truly strict and highly knowledgeable expert in this specific field, and I guess in addition to all of that, I should probably also make sure to draw them as well. Basically, these are really different emotions being quite reflected. See, if I just show it to you, if we show you it then, That can manifest at various different times in our lives. The really worst thing is why is it actually the absolute worst? For a human person, it's truly the worst, but not for us. When you have all these emotions such as joy, sadness, and sorrow, isolation are alive inside, but none of them find a way out. When you retreat into yourself, don't want to see anyone, and everything stays locked within, that's when true burnout begins. So learning to truly express your emotions is actually really, really quite good indeed. What's cool about art therapy is that there's no such thing as wrong here. That is to say, you can truly interpret it from virtually any conceivable perspective. But if it's hard for you to express yourself verbally, go to an art therapist and you'll be able to express it all non-verbally.
Is art therapy practiced during the war?
Art therapists are very... It's not that they're not useful, they're just more relevant for veterans, for those people who are coming back. Art therapy is especially great for children, because it's always about projection in any case. I had a case where art therapists were often undervalued, drawing, dancing, singing, sculpting, some kind of nonsense. I had that in my kindergarten. But actually, I had a particular guy who had a really severe and debilitating sleep disorder. He used both alcohol and sleeping pills. He slept, but he never truly felt rested. He slept very little. And even when he did manage to sleep, he never really got that deep, restorative sleep. Then a therapist came, they did some drawing, some sculpting, some dancing, 12 hours of sleep, deep sleep, just like that right away. That's it. I even joked with her, saying, "You're so boring that you can cure a sleep disorder like that." But in a therapeutic way, she just said, "You just don't understand." It's really true, I don't understand. These art therapists are actually very quite positive, so if you have... Look, this is specifically for those individuals who have unfortunately had a negative experience with a psychologist. A negative experience with a psychologist is like a negative experience with a partner. You just haven't found your own yet. So experiment not only with psychologists, but also with different approaches in psychotherapy. It could be CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, body-oriented therapy, anything at all. But art therapy is indeed included in the official list of practices highly recommended by the Ministry of Health, which are truly suitable and beneficial. And art therapy is not just limited to that. There's so much more to it. It also involves conversation, discussion, doing something, so everything will work out there. Look for yourself. Look for a psychotherapist.
Andrii, thank you so much for today's conversation.
Thank you for inviting me.
Friends, today, in our studio, we had Andrii Kozinchuk, a military psychologist and officer of the 67th Brigade of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. Write in the comments what interesting things you learned for yourself. Do you think that emotionality is one of the important values inherent to the Ukrainian people? Do emotions and feelings really prevail over rationality in us? Let me remind you that you can watch episodes of the Archetype of the Nation project on YouTube, listen on your favorite podcast platforms, and read on the website magicworld.com.ua. In particular, there you will find popular science essays prepared by folklorist Marina Demeduk, as well as recordings of folklore works performed by famous actors. Thank you for your attention, and goodbye.